There has been a big push by politicians to raise the national minimum wage from $7.25 an hour to $15 an hour or even higher. Many economists argue that doing so will have the unintended consequences of killing entry-level jobs for unskilled workers who are entering the job market because employers, already struggling with taxes and a devalued dollar, simply cannot afford to pay more. For now, let's just leave that debate for another time and instead look at something most Americans are completely oblivious to and a real solution to create a higher standard of living for all Americans. So what's the solution? We go back to using real money. So what do I mean by real money? The US dollar was real money at one time, but it has become currency instead. You might be asking, what's the difference between money and currency? Aren't they the same? Money has intrinsic value and is backed by tangible assets like gold and silver, but currency is created out of thin air and backed by nothing. It literally is a fiat currency. The U.S. Constitution states that only gold and silver can be money, but the government has not held to the Constitution. For many years now, they have printed all the dollars that they want, which devalues the dollars already in circulation. We know this as inflation, but it is really a hidden tax. Consumers see inflation as higher prices at the grocery store and gas pump, but in reality, it is the dollar losing value, so it now takes many more dollars to buy the same amount of goods. Inflation is a hidden tax and it hurts consumers but benefits the government. Let's go back in time to 1964 when U.S. 25-cent quarter dollars, 50-cent half dollars, and 10-cent dimes all contained 90% silver. A dollar face value of these coins before 1965 contained roughly 715 thousandths of an ounce of silver, which is almost 3/4 of an ounce per dollar face value. 90% silver coins were referred to as junk silver or constitutional silver. Right now, junk silver is bringing 75 times face value, or 75 paper dollars for every $1 in pre-1965 coins. In 1964, the federal minimum wage was $1.25 an hour, which was 5 Washington quarter dollars for an hour's work. To simplify this video, I will ignore the income tax on wages. But in 1964, the average price of gasoline was 25 cents a gallon, so for an hour's minimum wage, you could buy 5 gallons of gasoline. In 1965, virtually all the silver was taken out of our money and replaced with much cheaper copper and zinc. In ancient times, governments would devalue the people's money by clipping pieces out of the gold and silver coins. By taking all of the silver out of the coins in 1965, it was much worse than clipping pieces off of coins because it stole the whole value of the coin. Inflation doubled and then doubled again in America after the silver was taken out of the money. But here's the really amazing thing about real money. 90% silver coins maintain their purchasing power. Remember when I said that a worker who was paid a minimum wage of $1.25 an hour in 1964 could buy 5 gallons of gasoline for an hour's work? Since 1964, those same 5 Washington quarters containing 90% silver could always buy at least 5 gallons of gas and sometimes much more because real money maintains its purchasing power. I'm making this video on January 25th, 2026, and the average price of gasoline in America right now is $2.83 per gallon. The price of silver today is $103 per ounce, and the value of 5 Washington quarter dollars today is $93, which will currently buy 33 gallons of gasoline. If we still had real money and the minimum wage was still $1.25 an hour, those 5 Washington quarter dollars effectively is an hourly wage of $93 an hour. Let's look at housing. In 1964, the average price of a family home was $20,000. A minimum wage worker working 40 hours a week for 50 weeks a year would make $2,500 or 10,000 Washington 90% silver quarter dollars. Again, not counting for taxes, in order to make this less complicated, it would take 8 years of wages to pay off the average home in 1964. The average price of a family home today is $420,000. If a worker was paid a $15 an hour minimum wage in U.S. dollars for 50 weeks a year times 40 hours per week, he'd make $30,000, which would take 14 years of wages to pay off the average home. But if that same worker in 2026 were paid in 90% constitutional silver instead, at a rate of 5 Washington quarter dollars per hour, that would come to 10,000 Washington quarter dollars per year, which would be worth $187,500 right now, which would pay off that $420,000 home in just 2.24 years of wages. Americans would have a much higher standard of living if we still had a minimum wage of $1.25 an hour and we were still paid in real money. Just look at the real world purchasing power of those 5 90% Washington quarter dollars. Effectively, a $1.25 an hour minimum wage today in real money equates to a $93 an hour minimum wage, because that's what constitutional money is worth on January 25th, 2026. So let's demand that Washington, D.C., instead of pushing for job-killing $15 an hour minimum wage, let's demand that they go back to real money as the Constitution requires. Politicians will not like this because they cannot print gold and silver out of thin air like they do paper money. It would force them to be fiscally responsible. How do you think that we were able to pile up $38.5 trillion in debt? It's because the government stole our money. Please share this video. Thank you.